Hello, everyone. Welcome to our sixth session of the webinar series. I'm gonna give people 1 or 2 minutes to join. I know people just start slowing to join the room, and some people might need a little bit of connection time. But welcome everyone. Good afternoon. If you're in the West, or East Coast. But for the West Coast, it's kind of a noonish morning. Um, but thank you for everyone to join us. All right, so how many people? It looks like we have 18 people so far, but I think there will probably have more people join us today. Today, we were talking about parent as the STEM teachers, and we will really think about like how do we support parents to think about STEM, and how do we help parents to think about intentionally integrate STEM into children's learning goals. So this is kind of our overall purpose. But before that, let's have a little bit introduction of yourself. So if you can put in the chat of your name, what's your role, and then where are you coming from. So just give people a couple of seconds to do that. So the role you can say your teachers, your early intervention, OT, PT, SLP, or a coach. All right, we have people from North Carolina, um, and then Pennsylvania. And oh, we have quite a bit of North Carolina folk and Pennsylvania folk. I know Pip is on the call, so she probably recognize some of the people here. Um, and we have California. Yeah, thank you for joining us from the West Coast. All right. Okay, well, nice. I'm glad some of the people from the West Coast can join us. I know we're having a conversation internally as a team that we're thinking about that the California West Coast people, like, how we can engage them a little bit more. So, but glad you can join us today. All right, so a couple of house cleaning items. So today, just for people who just joined us today, if you joined our previous session, the house cleaning items basically are the same. If you're looking for CEU, this is only for live session participants. And then, so we anticipate the whole series will end in September. And after the end of the series, you will receive a request a form, and you can enter your information about CEU. And then, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to our team member or any logistical questions about this, you can just type in the chat and then we will get back to you. And then all the webinar will be recorded. So you can find a recording. This one will be available next week, by next week. So here is the QR code for you. If you are interested in if you missed previous webinar series and then you want to look some of the videos, review some of the videos and some of the handout materials, you can go to the link. I also include in, oh no, I'm also include in the chat. Just make sure I send to the right people. So here on the link, you can find all the information from the previous recording, the handout, and the slide. So if you want to review the information again. Because we have done this series for 5 times, so we heard a lot of feedback from people. After the end of each session, we send out an evaluation form, and it sounds like people really want to know that as an EI providers, how we can engage children learning about STEM in the childcare setting. So we hear you. So that's why we have a bonus session. Will be next week, the same time, September 24th, 1 p.m. And then we will talk about how STEM could be embedded into the childcare setting and how you as an EI providers could work with the childcare teachers and then think about in a different setting other than the classroom environment, how would you incorporate children's learning and also STEM learning to in a childcare setting. So you can scan the QR code to go to the registration page, or you can use the link that I just put into the chat, so you can register the webinar that way too. So this will be our last session, and we'll conclude with our webinar series for the year. And then after the September 24th, you will receive a CU form. So next sessions, if you attend next session live, you will also have an opportunity to apply for CEU as well. So any question about this, feel free to type in the chat. We will have our team members could get back to you as quickly as possible. All right, so okay, so this is our bonus item. So I know some of you have attended the session multiple times. Some of session might attend like 5 times already. And so I wanted to kind of pause here before I start introducing a new topic to just get a sense of what you have learned if you attend the previous sessions. So just a disclosure, on the video, you will see this is my child, and then you will see him throughout this presentation. So just a little bit background about him. He was born with a severe torticollis, and then also later we found out he has some communication delayed and also like the swallowing difficulty. So currently, he is in the early intervention system. He's currently receiving occupational therapy and then also speech therapy as well. So on this video, just give you a little bit context. We will dig into more about him later in the session. But just give you a little bit context. This is him probably a month old. That's the time when we kind of found out that he is only leaning to one side. And so while we're waiting for the physical therapy session, I was, kind of use the knowledge I have and to think about can I encourage him to turning head, um, um, like right and left instead of just limited his range of motion to one side. So that's kind of this is not without therapies. He hasn't started any therapy yet, but this is just me of thinking about based on my experience and my knowledge how I can better support him. So my goal for this kind of activity, I was thinking about encouraging him to turning the head a little bit more and encouraging him to looking from right and left, not just limited to one side, and because he really has a difficulty to turning his head to the other side. So I want you to look at this video carefully and then let me know what did you notice and then what did parents do in this activity and what are some of the STEM learning opportunities naturally occur during these activities, okay?
Red.
Good job. Where's the light?
Red.
Red light, Oliver.
Over here.
Good job. Blue.
Blue. Get the blue.
Where is blue?
Green. You like green?
It's green. Good job. It's green. Yay! All right, so if you can take a couple of seconds to kind of answer this question, what did you notice in this video? What did parents do, or what's especially about, what STEM learning kind of naturally occurred during this activity? I know in the previous session, we really highlighted STEM learning is everywhere. It could happen in every routines and every activity. Although in this activity, one of my goal is to kind of encourage head turning. But what are some of the STEM learning opportunity naturally occur during these activities? All right, so I saw a couple of comments in there. Uh, yeah, in different direction. He shook the toy. Different direction, and mom, the dad, right, shook the toy in different direction, encouraging him to follow the toy. Yeah, so this is kind of developmentally appropriate, right? So when he was born, his eyesight is still growing. Then light will probably be the kind of way that we can encouraging him to turning the head, and then the lights help to engage him in the toy. His eyes focus on the toy. Yes. Yes. So the lights. And then the light was motivating. So a lot of you talk about the lights. So actually, if you are in previous sessions, we also talk about um, we also talk about one of the the science concept. A big concept for the STEM learning is the light. That noticing light is a fundamental of some of the science concept. So in this activity, just kind of quickly give you an idea that lights and something just easily to incorporate, that we don't really need to purchase a lot of expensive STEM, doesn't really need to intentionally plan a lot of, kind of STEM stuff, but it's actually kind of an activity that we can naturally integrate into the daily routine. Is kind of thinking about, yeah, here's the motor learning, motor goals that we want to achieve, and then light is a way that we can encouraging in turning because it's only 1 month old, and his eyesight is not still not clear, and but he can follow the light, and how we can using that conversation or opportunity to also think about STEM could be naturally embedded in everywhere. All right, so yeah, so light and sound. Yeah, sound is another one. So if you are on our learning trajectory website or on our STEMmy website, that you will see a lot of fundamental concept of STEM learning is noticing the light and noticing the sound, and that's what baby do, right? They're using their five sense to explore the environment, which is that's why we say baby is a natural scientist. They are using their five sense to explore environment, to follow the lights, to hear their sound, and it could be naturally embedded into your IFSP goal as well. All right, so this is just kind of give you an idea and reflect on what you have learned in previous session, if you were in the previous sessions. So like what I mentioned in the beginning, so today's learning objective is to think about what's the role of the parents in supporting children's STEM learning, and then what are some of the strategies that we can use to support parents. So here's our agenda today. We will briefly talk about what's parent role, and then some of the steps or tools or useful resource that you can take away from these sessions and use in your early intervention practice. Okay, before we start, I just want to get a sense of how do you support families during EI sessions? I know a lot of, based on what I saw in the chat, a lot of you are EI providers. So how do you usually support families during EI sessions? Feel free to type in the chat. Coaching, modeling, problem solving, education. Great. Anything else? Ask them what they would like to focus on the day. Great. Joint planning, right? That's a good fundamental step. Um, right. Anyone else? Yeah, we see a lot of coaching. Okay, so great. So it looks like all of you have some basic idea of what coaching is. And then also encourage parents to share their concerns and talk about what they want to focus on for the sessions. That's great. I hope today's session will be helpful for you, and it's good to know like a lot of you have used a lot of coaching in your practice. It's good to see that. And then we will just go over some of the basic concept of coaching really quick, and then we will dive into how We have talked about a lot about STEM in AI, but how can we really support parents in this process? All right. So here is just an overview of what as a parents that what's our roles and what we can do in the EI process, right? So this is kind of a interesting way for me to share kind of my experience. So as a parent who has a child in the EI process, and also as a professionals who support parents in the EI process. So you kind of have this dual role. So a lot of things I share today is really based on my experience as a parent and also as a professional. And sometimes I remember before I'm a parent and had a child in the EI process, some of the things I believe might change after I become a parent because before that, before you are the parent who has a child with delays, and you probably know a lot of things parents should do, but when you're actually in that process, a lot of things and mindset have changed. So I'm hoping a lot of things I share today will also help you to recognize some of the challenges parents might encounter, and then how we can meet where they are when we start our coaching process. All right. So the role of parents, so of course that when we're in the EI, our parents can share information about their child, about their family, what their children are interested in, the routines, and then also they can share about how they feel, right? So are they feeling anxious about a certain activity? So I can remember that when we first noticed my child has a swallowing difficulties, I was super anxious during the feeding routines that every time holding a bottle, I will have an anxiety attack because it just doesn't know that if, you're feeding it properly or not. And so that's some of the information families, if they want to, can share with the providers and will give providers the good information. And then role of the parents. Parents are interacting with their child more than the early intervention providers, right? Early intervention providers might work with the child twice or once per week, but parents, interact with the child most of the days if they're not in the childcare. So they play a big role in provide a lot of learning opportunities throughout the day. And then parents and also a good partner that we can work with to think about what they want to focus on today, right? And then and then also thinking about how to use previous session records or data to really think about what's our best decision to move forward and to achieve the IFSP goals. So, and then the parents, if they want and can also advocate and ask questions. So that's kind of basic role of a parent. And then for you as a providers, I know a lot of you already involved in the coaching, but we as a providers, we can do active listening. We can hear from what they say and to understand what's their priorities and what they really want. And then coach parents to use strategy like all of you have been saying, working with them to encourage them to do something, and then empower parents how we can use our words, use our feedback, use our discussion to empower them to don't let them feel like they are, not be able to do anything, but like using like let them know they are doing really good job of, providing uh, learning opportunities to their child. And besides that, also share a little bit of information, like why this is important to focus on these goals and why we need to do this and to kind of provide that context. And also, like some of you are saying, like problem solving, right? So if this doesn't work, then what are some of the best next step for us to work on? And share leadership. I also saw some of you talk about sharing the agenda, like session agenda, so don't let parent feel like it's just a one-way interaction. It's a both-way interaction, and also that parent feel like they have the power in this relationship, and not just we have to follow what provider was saying, and not be able to advocate for what they want. And then also reflection and feedback, which is something we will talk about a lot today, because based on my experience, I know this has been the most difficult part for some of the professionals that, how do we provide a specific feedback to the parents, and then also how do we encourage parents to have a critical thinking, to think about, reflect what's going on before and what we can do in the next session. So that's what we'll also talk about today. All right, so let's before we move on to more specific tools, framework, and strategies, I also want to highlight this one size does not fit all in coaching. So ideally is that we will like families to share their concerns, right? To share their information, to share what they know about the child. But once in a while, you might have a family that if you ask him a question, ask the parent questions, they might say, "Oh, I don't know, whatever you want, or whatever you think is the best," right? And so that it could be some family could be in that situation. And so the idea of this is how we can tailor our coaching support to meet family where they are. If currently that when they just start the process, that they are not comfortable sharing the information too much because their cultural considerations. Like for me, I grew up in the quiet cultures, and then obeying is a big part of my culture that we should respect with what of especially healthcare professional, what they say, and you're not supposed to, kind of uh, make a comment and to say something wrong about it, or like kind of advocating for what you want. You just follow what providers want. And so that has been a really conflict part of me. Like I know as a professional, it's very important to you for family to share their information, but now as a parent, sometimes I will feel so hesitating, like would I disrespect the profession that's just share the information with me if I kind of just say, oh, I disagree with that, or I think there's a better way. So yeah, so I want to share this information just to let everyone know that you might occasionally encounter some of the cases that family might not comfortable, be open up right away, or if you encourage them to do demonstrate a strategies and they might not feel comfortable about that, and that is okay. And coaching could be in a different ways, not just start not just about demonstrating about or mod and show you what's the best way to support their child. We could always start with just sharing information. We're thinking about different way for family to share this information. If talking directly with you is not the best way, maybe some sort of technology tool or visual tools, or make it as a game or something would be helpful, or make families feel more comfortable to share this information. So I just want to put this out there. So like, don't force families if they are not comfortable with what we think the coaching should look like. So just wanted everyone to think about that, and then have this mindset when you work with the families. All right. So the next session, we will start talking about thinking about STEM, right? So how we're thinking about the coaching process and STEM and early intervention and everything all together. One of the tools that I want to share with everyone is that I know everyone seems like have some coaching experience. So on the website, you can see this is the webinar sessions. The handout for for this particular webinar, you can find all the handout on the link that I just put in the chat, where you can scan the QR code. So there's a ECTA reflection checklist. So sometimes we know we thought we already doing good job with coaching, but sometimes it would be great. It's also great to kind of just think about what's the best practice of coaching and think about how you're providing coaching to the families. Are you doing that really frequently, or are you missing something? So here's an example of what the reflection question will look like. So for example, that the question will ask you about, are you responsive to the family's unique life circumstances? It's a rating scale. So it's a frequently or all the time. And then this another example would be how frequent are you engaged the parents in identifying family concern priority or steps or action we're using everyday activity and to allow parents to select which activity will be easier for them to work on. So here are just some of the example of how those tool will look like. And it's just kind of sometimes a refresher or a reflection for us. Now the day we talk about it's really important to become a reflective practitioners, right? So thinking about how we practice, how we can become a better practitioner. So a tool that ECTA, Early Childhood Technical Assistance Centers. Yes, great. Anna, you got it. Yes, you're exactly right. Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center. Yeah, so I could send you the link, but or if my co-presenter, Kellen probably can send you a link in the chat. Yeah, so if you have more information, so the ECTS centers provide a lot of early intervention source resources and a lot of indicators for people to think about as you provide early intervention services. All right. So here is the house model that we call it, that our team works together to develop to really think about how the system experience framework look like in EI, right? So in this house framework, our foundation is collaboration with families. So everything we have to really start from family, right? So family is the center of our all process. Then how we can work with family, listen to family, kind of thinking about their priority, their concerns, and really work with them, but also intentionally integrating STEM into their learning goals. So, in this house framework, the first step is for sure, like how do we work with families to identify what children's interests are, what are their strengths, especially I think one thing I could share from my experience that I've worked with different providers in throughout this process, and sometimes I will encounter a providers that um, the message that the provider shared with me is really deficit based and really is not interesting in trying to understand my child's strengths, what he's capable of doing. And then as a family, I'm speaking from the family's perspective right now, so like it's really make me feel frustrated sometimes this because I will feel like, oh, did my child really cannot do that, or is my child really bad at doing that? Like, so just doesn't really feel that I am getting a positive experience. I'm just getting more and more frustrated with the things that my child cannot do instead of thinking about what my child's strengths are and interests are and how we can build on those interests and strengths to further support his learning. So I'm just giving you a little bit context and how we can shift mindset and from a perspective as a parent. So that's why I think it's important that we gather those information from the families. And besides that, we also need to think about what are some of the preferred family routines. So thinking about the example I shared with you before about the swallowing, right? So maybe back then, few months ago, that I would say feeding is kind of the routines that I'm most concerned about because of the anxiety that I have in me, and so having those information would be really helpful so you know which routine will you would like to target on. And if the child is order that which we'll talk about later that you need to focus on grocery shopping time or outdoor time, then how we can think about our ES session could go beyond in the house and go beyond in the play activity and thinking about how we can work with families in the different routines. And then the third step in this house process is okay, now we know what's family routine, what's strengths and families, and then what the STEM learning into IFSP, how we can embed that, integrating that into IFSP, and what are some adaptation strategy that we need to think about and based on each child's needs and support, how we can individualize our strategy. Does this child need a waiting time, or does this child need specific prompting? And then throughout this all process, debrief and feedback is really important. Like one thing I would say is that debrief feedback is not just happen at the end of the session. It should happen throughout all stages of when we work with the families in each step. So I will take everyone in some of the step, which I think it's really important for us to highlight in these sessions, because based on most of our work that we feel like that's kind of things that we're missing in the field, and hopefully that this will be really helpful for everyone. All right, so the next one, all right, so the next slide, why is not working? Oh, okay. Okay, so the first things, this All About Me is also on the web page. You can download it on the web page. So the first thing about All About Me is a tool that we develop to target the first two steps of the process of the house process. That thinking about what's the child's interest and then also what's the family priorities. So sometimes that we could just use kind of the conversation, right? So ask family questions like on the right side of the slide, you can see some of the questions that you can ask to get those information or through your observation. But sometimes family prefer visual that especially that families primarily English language is not English, they might prefer a visual way to kind of show them like, oh, what do you mean by certain things, or what do you mean by family routine? So, as a way to have a conversation about what's the child's interest and what's the child's strengths. And then also using a visual way to really think about, okay, so what's the goal that we really target on? So, here is just a different way for you to gather information, and you might already have some form similar like this in your states or in your agency that you work. But if you don't, this is an example for you to gather information about what children's interests and then what children's strengths. So this is an example of my child, and I filled out for him. So this is an example of how would that look like. So through the conversation with the families, and you can start filling up. So the name is Oliver, and he lives in a bilingual environment, and what is personality, and what things he likes to do, what things he likes to play, and what he's good at, and then but what are some of the concern family has, and then in a different way to make it more strength based. So for this particular child, like for my child, like upper body strengths, balance, coordination, communication, drinking liquid, or recognizing emotions is something that I'm thinking will be he still have trouble with, we're struggling to learn about. And so, but like through this kind of a visual way that we can really talk about, okay, here are something that a lot of things I'm thinking that my child needs, and but what are some of the first priority and the first goal that we need to target on. So here is just an example for you for multiple way to get information and a visual way to collaborate with families. And it's also a way for family to advocate, share the information if they are not comfortable of just, kind of having a direct conversation with you. You can just send them a form and ask them to fill it out, and then you can use that form to have more conversation. All right. Okay, so here is just a refresher of, what the house models are, what the house model is. So we have talked about identify children's interests and strengths using the tool and the family routines. Now we are going to think about what are some of the action we can do and how we can work with families to identify the action plan that we can integrating STEM into IFSP. So this is another form that we developed to go along with this model. And also, again, just recognize that you might already have some sort of action plan you use in your work. So this is just an example for you if you don't have anything like this. And it would be helpful that what's a good thing about this is we have a lot of questions really intentionally and help you to think about how STEMs could be integrating into the EI sessions. So sometimes we make it a form and just have a list of the priorities and what we're gonna do next for this session and what we want to work on uh, for next session or in the future. But this is kind of really have that specific STEM lens for you to think about how STEM can be integrating in EI. So it has a couple of six components. So the first component is thinking about based on what you gather, what the information you gather, what are some of the opportunities for the goals, like what's the target goal, and what are some of the learning opportunity you can think about children's not just the development learning, but also naturally occur STEM learning opportunities in that too. And then what's the family routines that you want to target on? And then what are some of the steps that you work with family together to figure out like how do we work on the developmental goal and also have some STEM learning component to it, and how will you work with family about that? We talk about different coaching strategy, modeling, coaching, provide feedback. What are some of the ways for you intentionally think about that? If we talk about feedback, what are some of the feedback you want to provide to the parents? What are some information they need in order to understand why it is important to focus on STEM? And also the reflection that would be helpful, like as you jot down some notes, as you ask question and reflect about the sessions with the parents. So this is another tool. It's available on our session website. And so here's an example of how you will use the tool. So based on the interest form example that I just showed you about Oliver, so in that form that I kind of identify the priority things that I want to focus on is the communication. So this is an example pretending that I'm work with the EI providers and here this is the Oliver's goal. So like for example, when shopping with his family, Oliver will let his family knows what he wants and how he feels. He might express wants and feeling by pointing to foods he wants or shaking his head when he doesn't want something, or use a picture to say tired so he can take part in shopping with his family because family has a concern about recently Oliver has become a super emotional when going doing grocery shopping, but he cannot communicate why, he's showing that way because he has a limited vocabulary. So here's just a video of showing you what Oliver's currently ability of a communication. So right now he can do some, sign language to show him more. We're all done. So this is just an example of, kind of give you a little bit context before we dig
You
in.
want more? Yeah, more.
Yeah, so this is kind of just a little bit of context. So, okay, so now we're going to dig into the communication opportunity. So that's a grocery shopping is the routine, and we want to focus on the communication goal. So, what communication opportunities could happen in the grocery shopping? So, for example, picking apples could be one of the communication opportunities. Or riding in the car, putting items in the car could be another opportunities. We're choosing between foods. For example, you want banana or apple. Could be another opportunities we can think about to embed some communication and also think about STEM learning, right? So how do we do that? So for example, this is the scenario of thinking about STEM and communication opportunities, right? So picking Apple could be another communication opportunities, but how STEM could take a part in there. So for example, if I go grocery shopping with Oliver and we are in the apple sessions, then we may say, how many apples do we need? One or two? And then that's actually how I do. I actually do, and this is from a real example. And then Oliver, which sounds like he's saying two, but not quite sure yet. He's just making sound. And then so I will prompt more. I say, do you want a big apple with a small apple? And then I will give them both options. And then Oliver will have opportunity to point to the bigger apple with small apple. And I will follow up with some of the words to describe the apple. Okay, big apple it is. So what do you see in this interaction that STEM learning opportunity is obvious, right? I'm offering his, a math concept that one or two. I'm also giving him opportunity to learn about gesture, pointing, and also scaffolding with some vocabulary, and also big and small, which is another comparison concept. So you can kind of see how everything goes together really naturally. It doesn't feel like, STEM is extra thing that I have to really think about how that adds to the communication opportunity that I'm going to provide to my child. So, and then you as a early intervention providers, then how you can support parents. So here are just a couple of example for you. And as I mentioned before, it's important to meet families where they are. So thinking about, what's their comfort level of you provide information, right? So if you're going grocery shopping with this family, you can observe, you can model, like how do we scaffold more vocabulary if communication is the goal, and then also provide some of the information, right? And then of the specific feedbacks that could provide to the family. For example, you can say, it sounds like the Oliver starts saying two, sounds like he's having a sound of two, and you can expand by giving me more words, go with it, like two apples. So think about how do you scaffold and teach parents to scaffold that communication or vocabulary. And then if family is comfortable, invite them to try and then do it in front of you. And then you two can kind of talk about it. What did you notice about Oliver when you give him more words? Did he sounds interesting in saying more words? And then also provide more feedback to empower parents. Like, I like how you pause after your question and give Oliver time to respond. And I think this is really important in the EI process, how our words can empower parents and encourage your parents to do more, not just saying like, I'm the professional, you have to follow what I say, and kind of acknowledge them they're already doing good things and you just adding a little bit more information would be great. All right, so I'm gonna pause here and give you time to think about, like thinking about another communication opportunity is if you're going to a grocery shopping and so for me going grocery shopping, Oliver likes to grab any items I put in the cart and then throw in the cart. So thinking about that as a scenario, and how will you support parents in integrating STEM learning opportunities and also communication learning opportunities into this particular scenario? Like thinking about putting items in the car. So I'm just gonna pause here and give you a little bit time to think about it. What are some of the strategies or words, sentence you would say to support parents in this process? Great, Brittany. That's a great one. Talking about items that are solid and liquid as you put them in the car. That's a great one. So heavy or light, right? And size. Take short video of a grocery shopping. Oh, that's another good idea. So we can rewatch it. And or if you are not able to go to grocery shopping with the families, and you can encourage the families to record some video and replay it and talk about it. And in one of my works, sometimes I'll ask families to record the videos too. And sometimes that families thought that, it's interesting perspective if, you rewatch videos and you're in that situation. Sometimes your perspective would be different. So that's another good idea of record video. All right. What do you like? Don't like? Wait. Sequence and planning. Yeah, and sound shakes a bus, noodles or cracker. Yeah, that's a great one. That's a lot of great suggestions. And uh, to kind of just thinking about how STEM could be part of it and also the communication too, right? Hard and soft, big and small, and heavy and light. Those are a kind of good way we can um, expand the vocabulary and also encourage communication too. All right, so great work. All right, so the other thing I also want to highlight here, oftentimes when I was working with early intervention providers and also family, provide reflection and also feedback with families. Sometimes that providers feel is the most challenging part for them. So here are will be just a couple of examples for you to think about how can I provide feedback, a formula for you to consider. And it doesn't come naturally for me. Like it took me a while. Like even though as a family, sometimes I will just start with a good job. And then I will think about, oh no, it's too general that I have to talk about something more specific, more effort based. So here are just some idea for you, and if you can get it right away, that is okay. It takes time to do this because it doesn't come naturally. It just need a lot of practice. And I also want to highlight here the feedback, the reflection. It should be throughout the visits and not just at the end of the sessions. Here is are some of the feedback we can say to the parents to empower caregivers. So for example, thinking about the picking apples activity, right? So if you are there with the parents to support the picking apple, this learning opportunities. So instead of saying more of a general kind of feedback way to go, and we can really think about how do we use more specific, more constructive feedback, and then beyond, think about just, oh, you're doing a good job, but adding more of little bit context of why they're doing that and they're already doing good job and would really helpful to empower parents to encourage them to do more because they know that they're on the right track and on the right path. So here's just some example of how communication and math and STEM could go together in your feedback. So in that picking apple activities, right? If you're EI providers, you could possibly think about, oh, I noticed you give him the choice between one or two apples. And then that really helped the Oliver practicing number concept one and two and using words to communicate his choice. So what you see the different way to go, and parents might think, way to go of what? Like, what do I need to way to go with? But like if you provide more constructive and specific, they know they are doing the right thing of providing the choice to Oliver. And they also know that STEM, they're encouraging their child to learn about number. And then they're also encouraging their child to use word to communicate. So I know we have a limited time, so I'm not going to go over every example. The slides will be available on the website. So you can kind of using that as an example as you reflect your practice and how you think about providing a feedback, including STEM components and then also children's learning components. So here is a formula for you to provide feedback to the providers. They all follow like kind of the same structure, right? So step one, thinking about notice the action. What is the parent doing? And then we need to explicit share with the families. And then the step two, the second part of the sentence where the feedback is why does it matter? If the parent is pause and to give children time to respond, and what is important and how they support children's development and communication or STEM or motor development or social emotional learning. So it always comes with two parts as you think about how to structure your feedback to the caregivers. So we're limited on time, but I'm just going to do a one practice so you can kind of give an idea of how you will structure feedback. So the example one is, let's say for a dad is rolling a ball and then to the child, and the child push it back with both hands, and dad smiles and clap. In this case, how would you encourage, what will you say to the parents based on the formula I just shared, and then based on kind of the example I just shared with you, what are some of the specific feedback you would share with the dad, instead of just good job, doing great, more vague kind of feedback. And remember, like, thinking about the push back and forth, roll the ball, what are some of the STEM components in there? Great, Anna. That is a great way to say it. Like, really follow the formula, right? Like the first part, I like the way you set up back and forth game with the ball. And this helped the child learn about joint attention, hand movement, coordination, and we can add a little bit STEM piece, right? And this also helped the child learn about force and motion, right? And then know like I need to push it and I need to roll the ball and then note about the property of the objects. So yeah, a lot of great idea. Derek and Narda, what in child doing? That's a great idea. Yes. So yeah, so there are some of the another example you can practice on your own time. This is just not a papa example, a grandpa. So another example, if you want to practice at your own time. And so another feedback strategy I also want to highlight here is, oftentimes when I work with families, so families is also, not sure what kind of feedback they need to provide to their child. So most of the time, the family I work with, good job is the most common one. Well, including me, I feel guilty about it, but like I'm talking about this topic, but sometimes that good job it just come naturally, right? But like sometimes I will recognize that, okay, I need to add a little bit more, and I really need to think about how to praise their effort and how to encourage them to try more, and how I use my word to challenge them and to do more and to scaffold their learning. So that's why I kind of encourage support families to provide more constructive and specific feedback to their child is also important. So here are just some of the example you can think about as you embed in your coaching practice, right? So instead of saying you got it, like this is for parent and child. And then it's a way for you to think about your coaching parents, how you can support parents to think about beyond saying good job, yay, to your parents, and how you can embed some of the not performance, sorry, effort-based feedback to their conversation with their child. So, for example, instead of say you got it, and a parent could say, "Look at you're taking bigger steps without mom's hand." So, why would the reason we want to do that? Because children will understand exactly what action, what things is helpful for them, and is exactly the behavior that we want to encourage. And if because we our words saying that, children are more likely to repeat it because they know what worked, and we are showing children the effort, right? Take a big girl step and do it again, and so not just the outcomes, right? And then help them feel proud of what they can do, not just saying you got it, but got it for what? That's a really vague kind of a concept here. So here is also a fan formula if you want to share with the families as you coach families, similar to how we provide specific feedback to the caregivers. So is first one is, oh, notice the action. What is the child's doing? And then what is the child is doing well? So in that big girl step we talk about, the child is walking, and then the child did well because it's taking a really big step. And then the step three is optional, how we can invite them to try again to or add a little bit more challenge. For example, on that big girl step example, we can say, do you want to try it again? Do you want to walk a little bit longer? And so adding a little bit more response and to encourage that more interaction and scaffolding in children's learning. So, okay, I know we have a few more minutes, but let's watch this video. This is my son again. And then as you watch this video clip and think about two things. What will you say to the parents and what will you encourage the parents to say to the child?
Ooh.
Wow. Shh. One, two, three. Rolling down.
Okay. So here's a video clip, just a little bit context. This is following physical therapy suggestions. So we're trying to build his upper body and he's learning how to crawl. And so we're using a wedge to help him to push himself up. And I was trying to using the ball to kind of encourage him to stay in this position longer. And so what will you say to the parents based on the example I just showed you that, based on what you see about what parent is doing with Oliver, and then also in this video, there are not a lot of specific feedback provide to Oliver. And so what will you encourage parents to say to the child? Well, Anna, you're a superstar in this session. It's great that you follow his lead so nicely. Yeah, and when he wasn't responding, you show the ball action now, and that helped him be a little bit more active. That's a great one. And then you can also add a little bit of stimp, right? So that's kind of talking about engagement, how parent is doing a good job to engage the child, but we can also add a little bit about that and a little bit about rolling piece and also the force of motion I just talked about. Yeah, and then the touch or different texture. Here. Yeah. And how about like what parent could say to the Oliver? So like what I mentioned in this video that there's a lot of good job with just yay. So if you're thinking about supporting parents to provide more specific feedback to the child, what will you encourage or invite parent to try? Okay. Be specific with what you want him to do and what it does well. Anyone else? Thinking about that, the strand space, we know that Oliver is responding to the ball, right? So maybe we can try to encourage parents to talk about, uh, Oliver, you are looking at the ball when it's falling down, and try it again, something like that. You're paying attention, looking at the ball. Yeah, Nori, similar to what I just say, right? Can comment on his visual tracking. Yes. Okay, you guys got it. I know it's hard. It's hard for me in the beginning, but I know you guys will get it. All right, so reflection. We have 3 minutes, but I think this is the framework that I really like, and to really thinking about how we structure reflection session to the families. And all of this information is on the slide, and you can take in for your work later. So as I talk about reflection practices, I like to think about this in the different buckets. So first reflection is truly know what's happening, right? So understand to what is happening to the parents, what has parent try, and what is parent doing, and how does it look like when parent tries certain thing. So it's just to give them more information about, okay, so today we share about the waiting time strategies. And before that, what else have you tried? And what does it look like? And then after we get the information, then we have to think about the second bucket is a dig in. And then, okay, so, but the waiting time is not working. Then how we can brainstorm and consider some new idea for the futures. Or after the sessions, that particular strategy is not really working well. And then what would things would do differently so we can encourage children to talk more or to communicate more. So to get more information of what we can do to support parents. And then the third bucket is to analysis, to compare and contrast, to understand why and how. Like to understand like why what have you done in a similar situation. So for example, wait time is not helping in the similar sessions, but have you done in previous sessions, and what does that look like, and why do you think this session the wait time is not helpful? It's because he's sick or because something happened, and have you tried anything different than the wait time, and where something happened in the past so the wait time doesn't work. So I'm just making things as an example, and you can use that example question onto your practice. And then the last uh, part of the reflection is action, right? So what is the plan? So after we talk about what happened, what have tried, what's not working, what could we do, what could we try differently, and then share with families and co-develop a plan for next step. What's the next step? When will you be able to do it? And then what would you like to do it together today or the next sessions? And so I'm hoping that this will be helpful for you as you structure your reflection session, because this also is not coming naturally to me when I first started. And then having that structure really helped me to think about, okay, when I share or having conversation with family, what do I need to know first? And then what do I need to do next and think about next? Okay, so now I got those information and what's my next plan? So I'm going to start here because we are running out of time. But I'm hoping that today's information will be really helpful for you. Last things I want to share with you is if you scan the QR code, that it will take you a variety of resources that you can use in your EI practice. So on those resources, that there's a lot of learning opportunity you can think about embedding in different routines like outdoor walk, playground, park, or grocery shopping, like what I'm just saying about. So or storybook reading. So those are a different type of resource you can gather on our website. So, and hopefully you can share that with the families to print it out or share it electronic with families. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope to see you all next week for our childcare sessions.